Good evening.
Good evening.
Let me start with that. Thank you all for coming. And I am tickled pink to be here and to have this opportunity to speak to you about a recent project that I'm doing about Spirit, the seventh vital sign, and I'll say more about that. And you can be assured that the videographer will not be videoing you. However, I'm going to leave time for questions and responses, which I would love to hear from you. And this will all be edited, just so you know. I'm taking this opportunity with such a gracious group of people in large to take some video clips for a website that I'm putting up. So you're helping me with that, and thank you very much for it. So, Spirit, the seventh vital sign. I believe I said to you that my first career is occupational therapy, and then my second career is as a hospital chaplain, second career now for almost 20 years. And this is a project that I designed when I was the Children's Hospital Chaplain at UW Hospital maybe 4 years ago. And the administrator had said that we have trouble, we Children's Hospital, but we children's hospitals throughout the United States get low scores on our meeting people's spiritual needs and meeting their emotional needs. And he said, I'm charging you to do something about that. I said, let me see, what could I do about that? So I created this project called Spirit, the seventh vital sign, so that nurses, particularly who are taking vital signs, would, every time they took vitals, for those of you who don't know, although I hear there are nurses in the group, and you've probably been hospitalized maybe once in your life, at least for the birth of your children. So they take these vital signs, and there are 6 basic vitals, and I said, I want you to take a 7th vital sign, because I think Spirit does the heaviest lifting in terms of healing. So anyway, every time I figured this, if nothing else, every time that the nurse took vitals and said to the patients, and children alike the same, how is your spirit doing? They would at least get asked, so that when the survey comes, and I had them rate it between 1 and 10, just like you did, and with kids you use smiley faces or frown, you know, and they can pick out the face just like that. And so anyway, I figured when the survey came, at least they would say, gosh, they sure asked me about it a lot. They must have considered it. So that was the birth of this project. But all of us human beings are spiritual. And what I love about this Spirit, the 7th vital sign, is that it cuts over, through, above the religious stuff. All of us are spiritual. And some people use religion to feed their spirit, but many people don't. Let me just say that. And so this is the point tonight that I'm going to share with you, is access to what gives you life, what enlivens you, and what feeds your spirit. So that's what I'm talking about. And I have handouts on your table, and there are 2 of them. And if you want to follow along, you can. There's a write-up called Spirit, the 6th vital sign. I need to change that to 7. I got, when I created this, a doctor reminded me there were 6. And I said, oh. Well, then this is going to be the 7th, but I haven't changed this handout since that correction was made. And this was written at St. Mary's Hospital, who's taken on this whole project throughout the institution, primarily on the 5, if you're aware of St. Mary's 5 Southwest. So let's turn that over to these slides. I didn't bring slides tonight, I brought the paper. And let me just walk you through what I'm talking about here. Yeah, they'll be in the center of your table, and I have more if someone didn't get them. So I'm looking at the first one that has what would be slides on it, and on the front side where there are many slides. And the first slide, it says, Spirit, as I just said, does the heavy lifting in healing. And if you look at the word healthy self, it breaks down to heal thyself. And it is the Spirit in you that is healing you. And so, Florence Nightingale, for you nursing people, Florence Nightingale, the mother, we would call her, of modern nursing, she has this quote, that Spirit is the deepest and the most potent source for healing. And going on to the next slide there, Spirit is vital to life. It gives life, it sustains life, and it creates life. And so, because of that, it's a vital sign. And it enters then into the ranks of healthcare as something we should measure and consider. And then you'll see down there the initials JCAHO. And for those of you who aren't familiar, that's the Joint Commission on the Accreditation of Hospitals. So I call it the Good Housekeeping Seal of Approval. And how hospitals want, they have to have a body that surveys them and says you're doing okay or you're not. And that was since 1979. 1997. Oh, that pesky learning disability, it gets in the way. So anyway, in 1997, they said all hospitals have to assess spirit in patients, and they have to provide for spiritual healing. They don't care how you do it, but they want you to do it. And often it falls on nursing in their questions, how are you doing? They ask that question. Any way we can support your cultural needs, your emotional needs, your spiritual needs. Hold it up, thank you. Yeah. So that's where that demand comes from now in all hospitals. It has nothing to do with religion. You know, we supposedly practice mind, body, spirit medicine. And I would say we're big on the body. We're better on the mind. And the spirit gets the short shift. And I think it does the heaviest lifting. So I want to get it in the conversation. So, as you see there, measured and recorded daily, every shift, every patient, ask the patient 1 to 10, or the smiley faces, how's your spirit doing? Now remember, I asked you to pick a number, because I'm going to ask you a little later to pick it again. But anyway, spirit is the, spiritual health is a sense of meaning and purpose in your life. That's what I'm talking about when I say spirit. And by the way, I've given you another handout, we'll look at it in a bit, but there's a longer piece on defining spirit, and I'm not going to do that here. I'm going to give you just the essentials of it. But this is a great article about a physician who defines spirit. So, spiritual health. If you're spiritually healthy, you have a sense of meaning and purpose. That my life is no kidding for something. And some of you are very aware that it's for something. And some people are saying, what would my life be for? But whether you're aware of it or not, it is for something. And then another measure of the Spirit is a sense of connectedness, both with yourself and with others. And lastly, one's acceptance of a greater purpose or reality. And on the back side of that handout, it says, in terms of the function of the Spirit, this is a quote by Nietzsche, the philosopher, you may know him, and he said, "He who has a why to live can put up with almost any how." And I like to think of it this way, and especially as we pledge the allegiance to the flag, I was reminded there are young men and women, 18, some even cheat and say they're 18 and they're 17, and they enter the service because their life is they're willing to give their life for freedom. So that's what I'm talking about. What gives you life? What do you stand for? And if you're wondering, gosh, how would I even begin to look at what my life is for? If you watch television, which I suppose who doesn't, and you see the Hallmark commercials, and they make you cry, that's a typical measure for me. Uh-oh, you have struck a chord with me. Or you see something or read it in the newspaper, and you say, I won't stand for that. Just like Jeff said, there's something I'm going to make happen in the world. And that was his project for literacy. So that, there's a purpose behind that for him. I wouldn't know, we'd have to ask him, but that everything is included, that there's a good life for everybody, and he's chosen this avenue to have that real in the world. And you're a service organization. You're for that. I heard it in your mission, if you will, statement, for the good of all. So you stand for that and give your life for that. So that's the Spirit. And if you look at the other handout, it's 7 signs of spiritual health. And let me just walk you through those. And then that's the end of the paperwork part. And I want to keep an eye on the time. You're spiritually healthy when, and of course, health is on a continuum. So you get a cold, you're not as healthy as when you don't have the cold. Or you've got some issue. So this is a Richter scale, but you say for yourself how you're doing. So you're spiritually healthy when you feel a sense of belonging. You've probably had that experience of you feel like you're the only one having this experience. You're totally alone. No one is like you are. If they only knew, but you won't tell them, because they wouldn't understand. You know what? Everybody belongs. If you said anything to anybody, they'd say, me too. So we're all belonging. We're belonging to this great Black Hawk Country Club. You belong to Metropolitan Women. You belong to your families. You belong to the Irish. Yo, Irish. You belong to, northern Wisconsin. You belong. And you'll have that sense of belonging. You're open to awe and wonder. And this to me is, there are 2 seasons, this being one, the awe season. And I watch the trees outside of my 4th floor apartment. I thought they'd die somewhere along the winter. They just hadn't fallen over. Bless them. And then I drive up the street and it's like, something's different. Am I in love? And then I see they're budding. And I'm like, get out. We are going to have another spring. And my favorite is watching a blade of grass come up in a concrete parking lot. And I say, now we're talking spirit. Or you live with an attitude of hope. If you didn't know, everyone is hopeful for something. You're hoping that tonight was worth it. You're hoping it ends on time. You're hoping there's no traffic on the way home. You're hopeful about something. And as a chaplain and working with the dying are hopeful too. They're hopeful that it isn't tonight. They're hopeful that it is tonight. They're hopeful their favorite nurse is on. If you're alive, you are hopeful. And you're only not hopeful in the condition called depression. That's when the hope light can go out, if any of you have had that experience, which I have. You have an ability to trust. So you would think, well, I can trust her, but I'm not so sure about her. But you can trust others or not, and that's a decision you make. But behind that is, can you trust yourself? Can you trust yourself to decide who to trust and who not to trust? So trust goes all the way down to you. You have, or you are able to show appreciation. And you've probably seen Oprah, to me, is one of the great, maybe examples. She has a gratitude journal and a book on gratitude, and she recommends that every day you look before you go to bed at something you're grateful for. And I've had patients in the worst of conditions that are even grateful that they're alive to have the condition. So we have some level of gratitude and appreciation. You have a sense of purpose. I would say this is probably the most popular expression of spirit, is that, what is my life for? And in my first field of occupational therapy, we talk about purpose and meaning in our work. We're always assessing what's someone's purpose and meaning. And then if it's raising dogs, we incorporate that into the therapy. So we use that to pull life forward and for someone to heal themselves. And so it's described in our literature of occupational therapy as the experience of meaning. And let me say a good example of the experience of meaning. You may even know what your life is for or not, or you may wonder. Or a better example is chocolate. Now, that's a favorite of so many people. How many people here love chocolate? Yeah, it'd be better to ask who doesn't. And I don't know if they don't like it, but maybe they don't allow it. But anyway, you know, to know chocolate, there's so much cocoa in it. The cacao, as it's called, and you can buy it at 79% pure or 60 or whatever. But that's knowing everything there is about chocolate. You might think, well, I know it's 10 calories per ounce, or I'm sure that's wrong, but it's something. And now you know everything there is about chocolate. And now I'm going to pass a piece of chocolate around. And I want you to eat the chocolate. Now you experience chocolate. It's very different than knowing something. Experience is a wholeness of the experience. It's, you might even say, shall I use this example? Oh, sure I will. I'm a risk taker. It's like carnal knowledge of chocolate. That's the experience of chocolate. You know when you're loved. In fact, it's in Hello, Dolly, the theater show. Annie, in her song, she'll sing, "It only takes a moment to know that you were loved." for the rest of your life. So once you've known that, once you've experienced love, you can't not know it. So that's what I'm talking about, spirit. And lastly, a sense of humor. And that's one of my favorites. Just to let you in on a little secret about me, in 1987, I went to Second City in Chicago and tried out for their theater program. They have a training program, it's great, highly recognized. So anyway, you had to try out to get in. I tried out to get in. I was the oldest person, gray as I am, to get in. And then it's a 5-stage program. And I got through stage 1. You had to try out for every stage. Stage 1, fine. Stage 2, fine. Stage 3 of 5, I flunked. But they let you try again. So I repeated 3, and then they gave me the hook. I absolutely had to leave Second City. So, sense of humor it's how I survived life, let me tell you. And this is how spirit comes into humor. When you laugh at something, when you even say that, I'm laughing at, the minute you are laughing at it, you have a perspective. So it's not the forest and the trees. You can see the forest through the trees. And whenever you're at that big realm, the context of living, that's the spiritual realm. And when patients will say to me, why is this happening to me? I love that question. I can't answer it for them, but I know this, that if you're looking for why, then you will find it. And that's a great question to ask yourself. What is your life for? So, you see some great quotes on the bottom. I love the Serenity Prayer for the workplace, and this applies to all of us human beings. Yeah. Grant me the serenity to prioritize the things I cannot delegate, whatever those would be. The courage to say no when I need to. Caregiver curse word, no. And the wisdom to know when to go home, for goodness sake. It's a takeoff on the Serenity Prayer from AA, but it's a great way, I think. So, that's basically spirit as a vital sign. And I wanted you to have access to your own life-giving self. What is it that gives you life? And many of the nurses, when I do this in-service, they're so good, those nurses. And they want to know, well, what if somebody says there are 2, what do I do with the 2? Do I give them a pill? Do I lay them flat? Put their feet up? What do you do with the 2? And I say to them, if I were with them, I would ask, what would it take for you to raise it to a 3? And you know what I say to the nurses? They'll tell you that too. They know. And they might say, if you don't quit waking me up all through the night and I could get a decent night's sleep, I'd probably be a 5. Or they might say, if my mother-in-law doesn't quit calling me and harassing me, and so the nurse could say, very good, glad to know it. We can put a block on your phone just like that. And someone might say, my life is not worth the living. And that's good to know. Because there are people you can talk to when you're in that state. But I'll tell you this, when you ask the question, it'd probably be a great cocktail party. I would use it that way, cocktail party kind of conversation opener. You know, it's like, well, who are you? Where do you work? What do you do? And you might say, hi, Jane. How's your spirit doing? And then listen. Because I'll tell you, the nurses are saying, I can't believe what people say to me after I ask them that. And they'll tell you about their life and what they want you to know and what's meaningful to them. So anyway, that's my shtick. I've made bumper stickers. I have more if you're so inclined. And if you're not inclined, that's fine too. And anyway, that's what I wanted to say. And I would love to answer any questions if anyone has them, or to get your reaction to this, or if there's any misunderstanding about what I'm saying. Anybody? You won't be on TV. You're worried about that. Do you know the greatest fear of human beings is death? Okay, do you know what the number 2 is? Public speaking. Yeah, so I know I'm asking a lot of you. But does anybody have something to say? Jean, please.
I would just like to, it's kind of anecdotal. My father was in the hospital, and he would have been described anytime he was in the hospital as a
You want to or you don't want to? Speak into the
I think.
all right. Do you want to be seen or do it in private?
My father went into the hospital, and has always been known as a curmudgeon. There's never been a nurse that he's had that didn't call him a curmudgeon. And the first time he ran into the scale, they came in and they said, "Well, Joe, how are you feeling?" On a scale of 1 to 10. He said, "What?" They said, "Well, how are you doing today?" He looked at the scale on the wall, 1 to 10. He says, "I'm an 8. I said, "Very good." So no matter, my father had his leg amputated at this particular time in the hospital, and no matter how miserable he was in pain, or how well he felt, he was always an 8. So what do you do with that patient?
You congratulate him for sure. And, you know, you've raised so many good points, and I'll limit my comments some, we'll see. He's an 8, on 8 to 10. That's a great number. And you could ask him, you know, what would it take? What would it take for you to be a 9? You know, I give the curmudgeon right back to him. Hey, Hank, what would it take for you to be a 9 once? And just see what he'd say. But 8 is great. That's a higher spirit. And I have had patients who are in their dying time, and I ask them, and they're a 10. That it's a different whole rating scale. And some people have the experience with their physical being that it resonates quite highly with their spirit. I have always said and pray, as we've mentioned here tonight, oh dear Creator and Great One, or whoever you are out there, please take my body before you take mine. Or please take my mind before you take my body, because I'm a goer, and that's how I cope. I move and I dance and I bike, and that's my life-giving mechanism. Not my head so much. I heck with my head. So anyway, I'm just telling you that story because you can be that separate, your spirit, from your mind and your body. Yeah. Thank you.
I just wanted to share the scale that you're talking about. We teach students, healthcare providers at the university. It's called a motivational interview. And one of the things I think that people need to keep in mind when we work with patients is if you're at a 4, and maybe there are people in here who say their spirit is at a 4, before asking what would it take to get you to a 5 or a 6, we ask them, why do you say a 4 instead of a 3?
Yeah.
So that everyone can focus on the positive in their life and then decide how they can take that positive and even move higher on the scale.
Thank you so much, Peggy. I'm aware of motivational interviewing, and it's a great technique. And you've just taught me that to say, tell me more about 4. Why 4 and not 3? Very great. Anybody else want to say anything before I say goodnight? they've been passed around, those glasses, and they're fun. You can get them at Farm and Fleet, I hear. And they just either have different heart shapes, or the ones I brought are heart shaped. If you haven't seen them, check out the little lights, or the little lights here.
Look at it.
Yeah, good.
Oh, it does?
Well, I just thought I'd throw my 2 cents in, but I lost my husband recently to Alzheimer's. But really right up to the end, if you asked him how he was feeling, especially we had relatives down in Florida that called us in the winter, and they say, "How's it up there?" And he'd say, "It's sunny and 70 here."
Your husband would say that in the middle of the winter here?
It's sunny and 70 here.
Isn't that great? And he was always sunny and 70.
Yes, he was.
And he was in his time of Alzheimer's too. Very great. That's a great, I'm glad for your 2 cents. Because if you say it's sunny and 70, and that's the part of the glasses, if you see sunny and 70, that's what you get. And if you see life, you know, the bumper stickers, that's why I created a bumper sticker. You've seen those bumper stickers that say SH happens?
Yes.
I back up from those cars because I'll tell you what, if that's what you're looking for, you'll find it. And if it ain't just right out there, you'll create it. That's the power of your speaking. So be sure and watch what comes out of your mouth, because that's your world. It's very powerful. Anybody else? I want to thank you so much for this opportunity, for the work that you do. I've made a promise with my life for a well world with freedom, love, joy, and possibility abounding for everybody. And of course, I can't do that. But I'll tell you who can, we can, and that's why I like the opportunity to talk to people. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and good night.